Bangladesh is one of the poorest countries in the world. To support their families, millions of children here are employed to work, many of them in hazardous conditions. Last year, the government came up with an ambitious plan to stop child labour by 2015. It's a staggering task when poor families have relied on child labour for generations. I'm Chantao Cho. On this edition of 101 East, we ask how Bangladesh can protect its children from risky jobs.
There are masses of children in the shadow economy of the country, in the informal sector, where there is no law, no regulation.
The parents were working the same way in the past, so to break that tradition, to break that cycle, is not easy.
Because of the socioeconomic and poverty situation, children are actually going to work, because otherwise they would be in an even worse situation.
I don't like my job. It's too hot in the factory. There's fire everywhere. I want to be a policeman or a doctor. I could also be a teacher.
Like many children, 11-year-old Kamal Hussain doesn't know what he wants to do when he grows up. But working in furnace-like conditions of a glass factory, his dreams are melting away. 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. His daily wage, $2. His job, anything but child's play.
It's difficult to get the rod out of the furnace because there's fire in there. It's very hot. Sometimes my hands get burned. I burned my chest several times. They gave me medication and I recovered after my mother applied it on me. There's no first aid here. Everything is outside. There's no doctor in the factory.
In 2006, Bangladesh banned the employment of children below the age of 14. But it's a struggle to enforce labour laws in the informal sector of the economy. This includes small factories, workshops, and home-based businesses. UNICEF estimates there are some 5 million children under 14 working in the country, most of them exploited as cheap labour in harmful conditions.
Half the population living below $1.25 a day. With that level of poverty, and not only the prevalence, but the depth of poverty. Practically everyone is busy, almost literally working for their next meal. So not having children in that context working as well is extremely difficult.
Dhaka, the capital of Bangladesh, is one of the most densely populated cities in the world. Nearly 40% of the people here live in slums. It's Kamal's day off from work. Like many households here, his family have hardly any space to live. Kamal's mother, Shahida Begum, is too shy to be interviewed on camera, but tells us she and her husband migrated from a village in the north 10 years ago. Rent in this tiny room is $20 a month. half of what Kamal's father earns transporting goods.
I work so we can have enough food for the family and to help pay the rent. When I grow up, my dream is to live with my family in a big house and be happy with my life.
Dr. Munil, Kamal works in the glass factory. So I've brought him here today. Can you just give him a general check and let me know if you have any... We take Kamal to one of several learning centres in Dhaka, run by NGOs for working children. This centre, by Save the Children UK, conducts free medical checks twice a month.
Basically, my observation is basically he's anemic. He is stunted, what I can see, in terms of height, age and height. So he's not eating 3 meals a day. And kidia khaiso tume? So potato and rice is the same carbohydrate. So they are not aware about the problems they are in. For example, in the external environment where they live in the slum areas, which is full of parasites are living and infections are there. They are not getting the safe water. Then sanitation is a problem. He's a sort of breathlessness he feels, and he also complained about the fever a few days back, and he's feeling some sort of feeling of tightness in his chest. Either because he's getting so much fumes in his, it's a problem of lungs, So maybe he's getting, less oxygen. His whole hand is sort of, it should be soft. It's very hard, and there's a lot of burns and scares, and he cannot, close this and fully flex. How can you expect that, A child is something like suffering from this type of, problem.
We return to the glass factory to meet Kamal's employer, Abdul Muttalib. He says parents and guardians bring their children here to ask for a job.
I'm helping these children by giving them wages. If they don't work, they will mix with bad company. I don't assign them risky jobs. I have children too. That's why I know how it is. Why should I put them at risk? I have a factory and I'm doing something for the country. These children are on the streets. I let them work here. It benefits me and it benefits their families.
Child labor is it was as old as the civilization in South Asia overall. So this is very much an acceptable way of life. Eliminating child labor in the short term is not feasible, given the practicalities. So I think what should be mindful of whether children are working or not is really not the key issue here. Whether they are working in exploitative situations or not, that is the key issue.
Poverty is the main challenge, and the present government has as its one of the high priority agenda is eradication of poverty, with extensive social safety net programs putting in place, and particularly for the welfare of women and children.
Having a safety net is vital. The current government doesn't want to repeat the consequences of a previous child labour eradication effort that went wrong. In the 1990s, the Bangladeshi garment industry was threatened with an export ban and legal action for hiring children. Child labour in clothes factories ended abruptly. But with nowhere else to go, many children ended up in even more exploitative and hazardous working conditions. Today, to provide an alternative, the government is paying for vulnerable children to leave their jobs and go to school.
So either supporting the family through cash incentive or cash transfer, or trying to provide one of the members of the family with some kind of employment opportunity. These are the strategies through which the ultimate target of phasing out child labor can be possible.
For each child who stays in school, the government gives 100 taka a month. That's $1.30. Not enough to halt the 50% primary school dropout rate. Health risks or not, the lure of more money is hard to resist. Now we've been told there are kids working in really grim conditions in a shoe factory down this lane. And even from out here you can smell an overpowering toxic stench. Here we are, there are 4 of them here. Shubho Chandra Das is 14 years old. He has worked here for 4 years since he dropped out of school. For 11 hours a day, 6 days a week, he inhales fumes from the spray used to coat rubber soles. His brother Joy is 12. They earn 20 times more than the government stipend to keep them in school. The reasons for dropping out are simple and familiar.
For rice. To fill my belly.
I want to study, but I have to work. If I study, I can get a good job when I grow up.
Through a pilot project, UNICEF estimates it will cost the government 0.4% of its national budget to help more than 3 million vulnerable children over 10 years. The key is to make better use of available resources.
It's not a lack of money. So political will from the government is fundamental. But then there's of course awareness creation in the communities, amongst the poor families also, to show them that to allow the child to stay in school, not to pull the child out of school, in the long run will be an advantage to the child and to the family.
But for many, the quality of school education needs to be improved so that families see it as a ticket out of poverty.
A lot of them are put off by schooling because schooling is what they expect out of school they probably don't get. It's a very structured way of school. You will find the informal schooling system is much more effective. You would be surprised to find how children could actually exercise autonomous existences. They actually choose independently of the parents to work, because it's one way of actually moving out of the life that they're living in.
There are several children here. Some are just sitting around, but several are actually working. We'll speak to this one. Hello there. What's your name? What's your name? El Amin tells us he is 13 years old and has been a trainee here for 4 years. He works 12 hours a day, often with no days off. How do you feel physically after a long day at work?
My arm muscles hurt. I get a headache from the sun. I take some medicine and I feel better.
Would you rather be working here or going to school?
To work. There's nothing useful in school.
It's quite good. He learns fast. After 2 or 3 years, he can do everything himself.
El Amin's supervisor says his wages, now $13 a month, will hit more than $100 as a trained carpenter. That's 3 times more than what half the Bangladeshi population earns. No wonder he doesn't want to go to school. But NGOs are trying to change that by taking schooling to the children instead. They've set up informal learning centers in urban slums where child labor is common. Every day, these kids take 2 or 3 hours off work to be here, to learn, to play, and to be children again. But it's largely up to the goodwill of employers, as and when they release the kids.
It can be difficult. Some employers are cooperative, others refuse to let the children come. Sometimes we need to visit their workplace repeatedly to persuade them. When the kids first arrive, they have difficulty adapting from their work environment to a learning environment. We help them by playing games. It's a big challenge.
One such student is Muhammad Shamim. He's 10 years old and started going to the center 6 months ago. Shamim works nearby. His parents are farmers in a village 3 hours north of Dhaka by bus. They sent him here a year ago to live with his cousin and work in his factory.
Initially, he ignored us, and we had to convince him to come. At first, he couldn't even write his name. Now he can write his name, his parents' name, and also read a little. Normal schools require students to attend many hours of class every day. There are also more expenses. These children have a different mentality and wouldn't be able to adapt.
Shamim works in a small factory that churns out 1,500 steel bowls a day. Workers handle sharp materials with bare hands.
It's tough in a workshop. I usually operate the machine, but the other jobs are tough too.
Shamim works 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. He recently learnt an excruciating lesson. There's no room for any lapse in concentration.
The pressing machine caught my finger. It was very painful. The top of my middle finger was cut off. I needed an operation. So painful.
You need your hands to do this job. I don't think there are safety precautions. It's manual labor. You use your hands. Of course there's a chance of injury.
Shamim gets an allowance of $8 a month, most of it sent home to his parents.
He lives with us. He's my cousin. Why is there a need for wages? I train him. Why is there a need for wages? He can't get rich by going to school. If he works, he earns money. Even if he is educated, he's not likely to get an office job. Better for him to work now, so he can be a skilled worker in the future.
I wish to study more so I can work in an office. It's more comfortable and relaxing. I wish to be a school teacher when I grow up. I wish to go back to the village to study and be with mom and dad.
For many Bangladeshis, the village belongs to the past. In recent years, rising water levels due to climate change has caused severe land erosion in rural areas. Homes, farms, and jobs lost due to this and other natural disasters. Every year, hundreds of thousands of people migrate to urban centers to find work. But there's no pot of gold waiting. The increased congestion in slums, their children provide a ready supply of labor for exploitative work. And the families struggle to break the poverty cycle.
Of course it hurts me that my child has to work, but my family needs the money. I felt bad when she was abused, but I can't afford to have her stay at home. Which parent would send the child out if there was a choice?
Nurul Islam migrated from the rural north 15 years ago to Chittagong, the second largest city in Bangladesh. He became a rickshaw rider and his family continues to live in a slum. Nurul Islam's 12-year-old daughter is a child domestic worker, one of more than 400,000 in Bangladesh. Activists are most concerned about them. working long hours in the privacy of employers' homes every day. Such children are among the most vulnerable to abuse and exploitation.
My name is Shumi Akhtar. I am 12 years old. My father's name is Nurul Islam. My mother's name is Roshan Ara Begum. When I started working 2 years ago, I didn't know how to wash clothes properly. My boss then would scream and swear at me. Now I'm good with my chores. My current boss doesn't scream at me. He likes me.
They like her enough to let her attend school at this learning center for 2 hours every day. All the girls here are domestic workers. Run by the NGO Young Power in Social Action, the classes teach reading, writing, and also how to perform household chores well. Being better skilled improved Shumi's relationship with her employer. Home is a cramped compound shared by several families. Her father's income is irregular due to his ill health. Her mother works in a garment factory. And Shumi's monthly wage of $7 hardly helps the family break out of poverty.
Actually, parents are very poor. They have no option. That is why parents turn their kids to slaves of mercy of employers. They have to face lots of torture in different forms in employers' homes.
When you said that the employers torture them, what do you mean? Is that a common thing?
This is a common. Already Shumi lose 2 or 3 jobs due to employers' torture. Because she made silly mistakes, then employers slapped and beaten. She has to work at employers' home 16 to 18 hours in a day. Shumi's mother is saying that every day Shumi is crying when she begged from the employer's home because she has to do lots of work. Employers prefer girl domestic workers because they are more cheaper, they are more obedient and compliant than adults.
I want to be a teacher so that I can help those who are like me. When I am a teacher, I will make sure to educate my sisters.
Well, at least her life is better because she's studying, isn't it? I didn't have education when I started working as a child. I just worked, so her life is better.
Meanwhile, the clock is ticking towards 2015, the government's deadline to stop child labor.
This is 2011 and 2010 already gone, but we don't have yet. We could not develop our national plan of action. We are pressurizing government to have a national statistics on number of the children involved. We need a sort of list that these are the work really mean the most hazardous form of child labor. There is a child labor unit which has been established under the Ministry of Labor, and they are actually working to monitor the implementation of national child labor elimination policy. So probably if they strengthen their monitoring mechanism, that would be one of the ways to try and find out how children are being engaged in the informal sector.
Policies are a positive indicator of a willingness to change, but having a policy in place is one thing and getting it implemented is quite another.
To implement the policy, the government has to struggle against the nation's history and tradition of child labor, and that perhaps is the biggest burden.